Sometimes all it takes is distance to reveal the truth, because loyalty isn't loyalty if it only exists when you're useful. You were always there, present, available, giving, and in your heart you believed that loyalty meant reciprocity. But Carl Jung reminds us the human psyche is a master of masks. The people around you may smile, praise, even claim love, but these behaviors often serve a hidden function. They are not always about you. They are about what you provide, your energy, your validation, your convenience. Then one day, you walk away not with anger, but with clarity. You don't respond to the calls. You stop attending, you simply withdraw. And the silence that follows, it is louder than applause. The people who claimed to stand by you vanish. Their mask of warmth melts into cold disregard. This is the gift of walking away. You no longer see who they pretend to be. You see who they are when there's nothing left to gain. And that, Jung would say, is the beginning of your individuation, the painful liberation from illusions. They didn't change, you just stopped dancing to the rhythm, and suddenly the truth was unbearable. You believed your presence mattered, and it did until you stopped making life easier for them. Carl Jung spoke often about the shadow, a repressed truth that people carry behind their personas. When you were useful, their shadow was hidden, but the moment you walked away, their reaction became unfiltered. They accused you of betrayal, of coldness. They rewrote history, painting themselves as victims of your silence. But this isn't about you hurting them. This is about them losing control. You removed the mirror that reflected their preferred image, and without it, they were forced to confront who they really are: needy, manipulative, dependent on your presence to feel whole. Walking away isn't abandonment, it's revelation. The most painful truths are often found not in confrontation, but in absence. It is then that masks slip, and Jung's philosophy proves itself. The shadow, once denied, comes forth with a vengeance. They said they cared, but your silence became unbearable to them, not because they missed you, but because they could no longer use you. People fear silence, not because it is empty, but because it speaks the truth they've tried to drown in noise. Carl Jung believed that the psyche thrives on projections, placing what we refuse to accept in ourselves onto others. When you were present, they projected warmth, dependency, affection, but when you became silent, they could no longer escape their own reflection. You didn't argue, you didn't fight, you simply stopped replying. And in that silence, you watched their narrative unravel. Their accusations became louder, their frustration more desperate. But what were they really angry at? Your absence, or the realization that they never knew how to love you unless you were performing a role. Walking away shattered the illusion. You were not cruel, you were honest. And in Jungian terms, your silence became the mirror to their unconscious. You didn't hurt them, you just stopped hiding the truth. You owe no explanation for your peace, especially to those who benefited from your chaos. You used to explain everything: why you were distant, why you needed space, why you were tired. But the explanations never healed anything, did they? Because those who truly care don't demand clarity for your silence, they offer presence in your absence. And those who needed explanations, they needed control. Carl Jung spoke of the compulsion to control others as a projection of inner disorder. When someone insists you justify your peace, they're not trying to understand you, they are trying to reclaim what they lost, the influence over your emotions. The most powerful thing who ever do is walk away and say nothing, because silence, when it is intentional, becomes a form of liberation. It means you no longer seek permission to evolve. It means you no longer require validation to heal. And in your absence, the noise they make is just proof of how loud their silence feels without you. When you stop showing up, their true conversations begin, and you realize who was pretending all along. They smiled in your presence. They nodded at your ideas, they praised your kindness, but when you stepped away, their mouths didn't stay silent. And the things you hear later, the rumors, the cold reinterpretations of your character, those are the truths that were hidden behind every compliment. Carl Jung understood this deeply. We all wear masks, not just to deceive others, but to survive in the roles we think we're supposed to play. But once you step off the stage, once you stop acting according to their script, they no longer need to pretend. What they say behind your back after you walk away is not betrayal, it is revelation. You are finally seeing who was comfortable with your light and who was only tolerating it because it made them feel needed. Walk away, not in anger, but in wisdom. For what they say in your absence is the final chapter of the story they were too afraid to tell you face to face. They never told you how much they needed your presence until it was gone. You didn't realize how deeply they depended on you, not because they ever said it, but because they never had to. Your presence as a constant, and constants are rarely appreciated until removed. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious mind reveals itself not in words, but in patterns. And the pattern was clear. They only reached out when they needed something. They only praised you when you performed. They only loved you in proximity. But once you walked away, they collapsed, not visibly, but emotionally. You were the thread holding their emotional chaos in place. And when you removed yourself, their stability went with you. They may never say it out loud, but your absence was a mirror they couldn't bear to look into. Walking away didn't just disturb them. It dismantled the fantasy that they were fine without you. That, more than anything, is your quiet power. If your absence doesn't change anything, your presence never really mattered. There is a quiet test life gives you, and it doesn't involve conflict, confrontation, or chaos. It involves stepping back, removing your energy, detaching from the cycle, and waiting. That's when you see who actually cared, who noticed, who reached out, who fell silent. You begin to notice how many people only responded to your presence because it was convenient, not because it was meaningful. Carl Jung once said that people often confuse connection with proximity. Just because someone is around you doesn't mean they are with you. And just because someone disappears when you leave doesn't mean they ever truly saw you. The real ones will find you even in your silence. The rest will let you fade because you were never part of their world to begin with. You were just a comfortable background sound. Some people prefer you broken because your healing reminds them of what they refused to face. Not everyone cheers for your growth. Some sit in silence as you rise. Others mock your transformation, questioning its authenticity. Why? Because your healing is a threat to the version of you they control. Carl Jung taught that individuals resist the change they see in others because it threatens their own identity. Your evolution pulls them toward a mirror they've long avoided, the reflection what they never had the courage to confront in themselves. They liked you when you were compliant, when you were seeking approval, when you didn't question your worth, because then they could define you. But now, you walk with clarity, you speak with intention, You say no without guilt, and that to them feels like rebellion. Not because you've wronged them, but because you've outgrown them. Walk away and heal. Even if your healing costs you the crowd, the stronger you become, the lonelier the path feels, because most people aren't ready to walk beside you. You thought becoming stronger would attract better people, that clarity would bring companionship, that maturity would bring understanding. But instead, it got quieter, lonelier, more distant. And that's the paradox. The more you understand yourself, the fewer people can understand you. Carl Jung believed the path of individuation, the journey toward becoming whole, is often walked alone. Not because you chose solitude, but because most are not yet ready to meet you at that depth. People say they want truth, but they only want the version that doesn't require self-reflection. And when your growth forces them to question their comfort, they retreat. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because they're not ready to leave their illusions behind. So you walk alone, not as a victim, but as a pioneer of your own becoming. Every step forward is a step inward. The farther you walk away, the clearer you hear what was never said. When you're close to someone, proximity can blur your perception. Their words, their gestures, even their silence can be misinterpreted through the fog of familiarity. But walk away, and you begin to see the manipulation hidden beneath kind gestures. The silence that wasn't peace, it was punishment. The praise that came with strings. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious motives of others often reveal themselves when your presence no longer serves them. That's when you realize they never loved you, they needed you. They never respected you, they used you. And the only loyalty they had was to what you provided, not who you were. It is distance, not time, that reveals the truth of relationships. Walk away, not to punish them, but to unmask what was always there. When you stop giving and all you get is silence, you found your answer. Stop over-explaining. Stop justifying. Stop chasing people to stay. The moment you stop reaching out and their only answer is silence, know this: their interest was conditional, their care was calculated, their presence was performance. Carl Jung believed that the psyche responds to truth even when the mouth stays shut. Silence is not always peace, it can be apathy, resentment, or indifference. But in that void of words, there lies an echo of truth no apology could hide. You don't need closure from the people who never opened up. You don't need explanations from those who always deflected. The silence is the closure. Walk away not because you're bitter, but because you finally accepted the truth that was always whispering beneath the nose. You don't find out who's loyal when you're on top. You find out when you disappear. It's easy to support someone when they're winning, when they're popular, successful, admired. But what happens when you fade from the spotlight? When life turns quiet, when you fall, disappear, or choose solitude? That's when true loyalty speaks. Carl Jung often spoke of the shadow, the hidden aspects of self and society. And in your absence, people reveal their own shadows. Some betray, some gossip, some vanish. Only the rare few stay grounded, those whose love for you wasn't tied to what you could offer, but to who you are. So test the world with your absence. Step back, walk away, disappear, not in bitterness, but in wisdom. Then watch carefully, not with your eyes, but with your soul, because when the noise fades, only the true voices remain. You don't lose people when you walk away, you lose illusions. We often confuse attachment with love. We stay in toxic spaces, hoping our entrance will earn us loyalty. But what we're really doing is betraying ourselves for the sake of illusions that they care, that they'll change, that they understand. Carl Jung reminds us that true transformation begins when we withdraw our energy from those who no longer feed our spirit. When you detach, not with bitterness, but with clarity, you begin to reclaim your power. You stop negotiating with disrespect. You stop translating mixed signals. You begin to feel peace where once there was confusion. Walking away isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's knowing that your soul deserves a place where it doesn't have to beg to be seen. The most powerful thing you can say is nothing and walk away. You don't always need to scream your worth. Sometimes silence is the only language the soul understands. Walking away isn't loud. It doesn't need applause. It is quiet, deliberate, and powerful. It is the moment when you decide to stop proving yourself to people who are never listening. Jung taught us that the psyche demands integrity, that each time you abandon yourself to be accepted, you fracture your soul. But when you walk away, you gather those pieces again, slowly, carefully, with grace. They may call you arrogant, cold, unreasonable. Let them. Your peace is not up for negotiation anymore. Sometimes you have to leave them to find you. When you walk away, you don't just see others clearly, you begin to see yourself. The version of you that no longer chases, no longer explains, no longer compromises truth for temporary comfort. You see the strength that was buried beneath fear, the clarity that was clouded by noise, the dignity you forgot you had. Carl Jung believed that individuation, the path to becoming your true self, requires separation, not from people, but from the roles they trap you in. The pleaser, the savior, the one who never says no. And as you walk away, piece by piece, those masks fall off. Then there is only you. Honest, whole. Watching the ruins of false connection from a distance, and finally feeling peace.